All right, let's get into making the handle and hilt and pommel for the sword here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my planes. I have my planes laid out. I have my sword built. I'm going to go to the top viewport, and I'm going to kind of guesstimate what I want for my cylinder. Probably grab the center because I know the handle should probably be the center of the sword, and just guess. You know, I clicked 3 times, once to make it the width, and then another time to go to the height. If I go back to front view, I can see that I'm a little off here and there. But part of the problem is that because we made the center of the handle um, the actual pivot point, we want to make sure we move this up or down anyway. And then I'm going to come over to here. By the way, this should be defaulted to 18. I'm pretty sure that's what everybody's set to. If I change this to 10 and I change this to 1.5, I think was good. And I kind of just center it up a little bit. And then I am going to change this to 20. I just wanted to show you me doing it so you understood. So I'm going to change it to 20. The reason I'm changing it to 20 is so I get a center line. I just want a center line for my my hilt here, so you know what comes next. We break in symmetry. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse it. Actually, I could get rid of these other subdivisions if I want. In fact, I will just do that right now. We'll just turn these down so we have nothing. And then I'll go back to here. I'll change it to edible poly. Now, this can be the hilt or handle or whatever. Okay. My suggestion is after you block out one of these, then you save it and copy it. That way you don't have to restart from scratch, possibly. But if not, that's fine too. So next thing I'm going to look at here, before I go any further, before I put any detail or work on that way, I'm going to look at this and say, okay, this next shape looks like a sphere, and this one does too. In fact, they both kind of look the same and very similar. So I'm going to start with this bottom one. I'm going to drag it out. Oops, from the top again. Always go from the top here. Drag it out. Again, I'm just going to guesstimate, go back to the front by pushing F, pull this down, center it on here, and if you look at this by default, I think it's up like 32. Okay, what we want to do is make this the same amount of subdivisions because we're going to add these two together and when we build it. So I'm going to change this to 20 and see if that works. And lo and behold, if I move this up and down, you'll see that it's the same subdivisions. They line up pretty close to the same. Obviously, you need to move it to make it match. But I'm just showing you that those match. It doesn't give me a subdivision in the middle, but we'll deal with that. That's really easy. I'm going to change this to, let's say, 4. That's too big. Let's try 3. Yeah, that works, and that's fine. And I don't always use spheres because I don't like this bottom thing, but we'll play with that in a second. So now I have a sphere kind of the way I want it to be. At this point, what I usually do is I will just scale it to match because I know I want it to be wider than high. So I'll scale it out to match a little bit. Maybe I'll turn it to Alt X to get a better feel. And you know, 3 may be too much, so 2.5. And let's see if I scale this out. Let's do 2.75. There. So it's pretty close. Or really close anyway. So this is good enough to start with. Now what I will notice is that this probably, oh gosh, it's driving me bonkers here. I'm going to say 0.5 and just, well, let's still do little. Let's say 6.5. I just don't like going between, but that's fine. 6.5. Scale out a little bit like that. That's fine. I'm going to move it down just a tad just to match. Okay. I'm not going to worry about matching the lines at this point because I'm going to just go ahead and collapse this part to an editable poly. Then I'm going to go to 2, go to my edit edge mode, grab this one right here, do Alt R to select the ring, and then just connect. And you'll notice that it almost connects right in the center, perfectly where I want it, so it'll match up perfectly when I start to seam these together. Okay, let's look back at this right here, and I'll just say okay, and I'll grab this guy, and if I double click on it, it'll grab the whole loop, and then I will say chamfer on this one, which we did before, and I'm just going to chamfer it till it's the right height, like that. real quick. And then I will say okay, and I will grab these two edges and go to poly mode. If I hold control and click on any of the other options, it will have what I selected in the previous option. So if I grab this right here and I go to vertex mode, it's going to grab just those vertices. So it's pretty awesome. If I come back to here, you'll see I had that selected already. So all I have to do is push control and the polygon mode, and then I can just right click and say bevel. Okay, so bevel by default is going to go into this bevel group way. We don't want it to be in group. We want to drop down and go to local. So it's going to, instead of going in one group trying to average out their positions, we're going to go down to local. So each polygon averages between the direction if it was going out from its normal here. And I think it's 0.5 was the number I had. And you'll see that this also, this negative's too high, so I need to pull that back. And 0.5 looks a little bit too big, so we'll try 0.25. Yeah, that's probably pretty good. And I'm just looking at the background here, and I will scale this up a little bit so it's not so much, or down, we'll say 7.5 just for sakes. Yeah, that works. I'm not, you know, again, this is just a rough design. If you want to make it perfect, you could spend time doing that. Okay, so this is pretty much blocked in. What I need to do now is make this one. So instead of making another sphere and making sure it matches, and let's make sure these are lined up correctly here. That's perfect. Oops. You know what? I don't mind that it's wider than it is this, because I think that's the way the original was set up. Yeah, I'm not going to match the scale of this sword width too much because I don't think this is correct when I did that layout. Let's come back to here. I'll say F and shift and drag it up to here. And all I'm going to try and do and say, okay, as a copy, I can probably call this hilt or guard. I'm going to end up collapsing it anyway. So I'm going to grab this and kind of get an idea of where I want it to be. You know, if I look at it right here in the middle and then I just do a scale just out till I get the size I want. That works pretty good. The problem with the scale at this point is that actually it works okay. That's fine. It's a very slight, oh there we go, the bottom. If I take this one and I hide it real quick and I look at this one and I do X, and I go from the bottom, so I push B, Z. No, it's actually not horrible, but you'll see because I didn't scale it evenly in two directions like this, those don't line up. And we can come back and fix that after the fact. So I'm going to leave it the way it is for now. It shouldn't be a big deal. Okay, and then I'm going to come into the poly mode. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and I kind of like this, so I'm going to go back to front. I'll unhide that other piece that we had. I'll pull up my sphere 2. Oops. I don't even know what this one is, so I'll delete it. Okay. So I'll pull up this one, and I will go back to Alt X so I can see through, and then grab polygon mode and just grab everything above that for now. And now all I have to do is stretch it out. And I could use the soft selection stuff, but soft selection, I was never crazy about it. It never works exactly the way I want, so I just do it by hand. And I'll grab this up, pull it up here, and maybe grab these guys and pull it down. It's just as fast to figure it out this way as it is to use the soft selection, in my opinion. So, I could take this whole thing and this whole thing. The way I scale stuff in is I match the lowest and then I deselect. So if I take this and I scale it this way, I notice it's a little off in the picture here. And then I take these guys and I scale them even more. And then, yeah, that's good enough. I don't mind that there's a little bit of extra of a bevel right there. Okay, so now I've got those three pieces set up. So I'll go back to front view, and I might as well just attach these two. So we'll attach the bottom and the top. And I will attach this, but I have to clean it up real quick. But before I do that, I'm just going to cut these babies in half, just like that, like we do. I'm going to come over to here, and then the reason I didn't attach it is because I knew I had these top planes. So, oops, let me select it. Oh yeah, go to the top plane here, get rid of that one, get rid of this one, delete, go to the front. I guess I could have just done it this way, delete. And then I can attach all of these, and since it's the whole handle, and they'll all be attached. Now it looks like I missed a couple on this one, so I'll just grab them just to get rid of the clean here. Delete. Okay, so at this point I know everything seems right, so I'm going to go ahead and hide my my reference planes here. Just hide them. There we go. Okay. And then I'm going to grab these. Looks like I missed on here too. So this one. This one and this one. Delete. Let's take a look. Yep, pretty close. Again, I scaled it weird. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole object by pressing F5 and going to element. This is what I mean by element if you didn't catch on last week. So the problem we're having is that it's scaled not evenly. And we could take this in two ways. We could either just take this and scale it out. This way would have been better to do while they're all one object. Or I can scale this piece back, or I can just try and snap them together. So what I'm going to do is just, instead of scaling it out, I'm going to scale it in to match. So they're pretty close right there. That works. And the handle being a little bit thinner on the sides makes more sense anyway. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to 4, delete all these interior edges. And one of the ways I do that is I go back to 2, I double click and push Alt-R, so I grab that whole thing. And then if I push Control and click on Polygon, it'll select that whole thing I've selected. Then I can delete. Then I can push F5 because the element means anything that's not attached by vertices. And that means this sucker is an easy grab, so I can just delete it. And I did notice down here that there's a couple of, leftovers. So there we go. And then I'm going to do the same thing up here. I'm looking at it, and this one may need to be divided because usually what I do is I turn it over, but I forgot to. So to make our life easy, I'm just going to take this 2, go all the way around to there, and then just say connect and pull it in so it's just about right. Okay. Okay, and then we're going to do that same thing. 2 again, grab this one, Alt-R, delete. I could have done that, or I'm going to come over to element now, drag this one and delete it. So now I have a hole in the bottom of the piece and the top of the piece. So all I have to do is attach them. They should be pretty close. It looks like I might be off. So why don't I go to L, F, and see. These are a little bit high, so I will grab this edge here and drag it down so they match up a little bit better. And this one's pretty close. If I go to the left, looks like they're pretty good. If I go to the bottom, this is where I'm afraid we're going to be a little off. It looks like we're a little off. I'm not dying about how off it is. So what I'll do, go to 1 to vertex mode, grab all these verts, and try and see if weld will do it for me. And it looks like weld did. See, the weird thing about Max now that they changed recently is that when it welds, it doesn't show the second vert going towards it. It just shows that that vert is active and it's gone, meaning that it is being used and it's disappeared. So if I push checkbox right here or push plus, it will snap to it. It's like a preview. So if I come up to here with that not changing, I just grab all these verts again. You'll see, there they are. Happy could be. And then just say check on that one. And now I've got half my handle. I'll say front Z, and then turn off the vert mode. Center down, so all I have to do is symmetry. And of course it disappears, so I go left. Now, the only thing that's left is probably something I could have done before I broke it in half, but I didn't, so it's okay. If I had capped this before I broke it in half, it would have been easier, but this gives me the opportunity to show you another tool. Hide unselected. Okay, so one of the cool tools in Max is this thing called bridge, and what I can do is I can grab an edge right here, and I can grab an edge right here, and I can come over to this tool, which is inside edit geometry. I'm sorry, inside edit edges, and it's called bridge. And it's got a little this, and see, it just collapsed all the way across there for me, and I can divide it so it's like that. So I have one subdivision, so that works. Now all I'm doing is the top because that's exactly where the sword's going to go in, and that way when we decide we want to put the sword in, we'll have it. And if I hold control, I can grab another edge and 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 another edge. And then I can close it, and then finally I can go to the kidney bean or border and grab it and say cap, which will close that off for me. Okay, so now I have that closed, and if I go like this, I'll see that. Now let me open up the, bring out the sword again so we can attach the sword to it real quick. Okay. So you'll see it's on the center line, so that's good. The center line of the edge here, and it doesn't go past that, so I don't really need to cut that. I could just do something like this to get rid of that weird triangle, because we want to try and get rid of triangles. And we just go over to connect, and there's connect. And then I can just target weld this to this, and I'll still only have 4 sides, so that works. So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to look at this vert, and just that vert, if you can hear me, make this transparent. I'm going to go to this vert, which is not the one I wanted, sorry, this one. I have to go down, go to 1, go to this vert, and move it out so it's matched up with that, just pretty simply. And you'll notice these other ones do too, and we're going to fix that in a second. So what I'm going to do is go to F2, go grab these two, and I'm going to show you a trick with chamfer that we haven't shown you before. So I'm going to go to chamfer like this, and you'll see, of course, it goes too big, so I'm going to pull it back, and look at that, it kind of matches. If only this had a cap. So let me pull this out to there, so they match pretty close, everything but the corner matches, meaning that that new edge that I've made, let me show you. The new edge, I've divided this in half by saying chamfer, and come on, chamfer, and it snapped it out. Now if I move this up and down, it changes the width of it. So there's your chamfer, and I could just say okay and then delete the interior faces, or I could click this little button right here, which means open, and I open it up, and it's done. Now all I have to do is attach the verts. Now, this one's too far apart, so I'll say target weld to here, and then if I grab carefully all of these verts, so I have the verts from the object and the verts from the sword connected now, and I just say weld back to like we did a second ago. Oops, do you know what first I have to do? I have to attach this one to that. Okay. When I go back to that, it should have those verts selected, but I need to do it again. I'm going to turn off the symmetry here so I can see a little bit better. And I'm going to grab these guys like that. Oops, make sure I just grab these guys. And then I will say target, or I'll just say weld. And it went from 299 to 294, so it means it's welding correctly. And if I zoom in on it, you'll see that they don't show it if I go to Alt-X, but you can see one of them is highlighted and one of them isn't. That means that it's working. If I push OK, it snaps it to there. So now I have that. Now the one thing that I have noticed is that since I've done half of it, I could just symmetry it, but it drives me a little bonkers to do that. So I'm going to take this edge right here and delete. Now, when I say symmetry, bonk, I now have my whole sword as one piece, completely what's called airtight. Okay, now you're gonna see some weird stuff in here. That's possible. That looks like my edges are a little bit overlapping in some places. Ooh, and it looks like it didn't weld everything because, oh, one thing I did notice is that this has a subdivision here that is not on the sword. So there's two ways you can handle it. You could cut the sword again, and that's totally a valid way to do it. It would just go up to this and make this a quad, which isn't the worst thing in the world. So to do that, I would go to 2, click on this, and go to Alt-R, and then just say connect, and make sure that it's 0. There's other ways to do it, and I'm going to show you quicker ways in a couple of things up here. I just want to get used to the idea of what we're doing here. And then I'll do the same thing on this one. I'll just grab that edge, Alt-R. Even though it doesn't look like it grabbed it, and you can see the piece change. Like that, and if you look, it almost exactly matches up, so I should be able to hopefully grab just those verts and say weld. Yep, pretty close. Weld. Okay, so there you go. Now the question is this acting weird? Is it rendering right? So we can look at this one and see if our smoothing groups are at 1. And this one is at 2, so that's right. And this one is at 2. So the problem is that this piece right here probably needs to be a different. So because I don't want it to touch here, it's trying to blend this edge to that edge. If I turn off the wireframe here, you'll see it's kind of acting weird, especially on this side. This side may not be 2. This side's 1, and this side's 2. So what I need to do is just make this 3. Easiest way to do that is to turn on the ignore back facing angle, grab it, turn on the ignore back facing, and angle snap and grab it. It'll just grab the whole thing, turn off 2 and name it 3. And now our sword should be fine. If I look at it, there's a perfect edge from there to there and a perfect edge from there to there. Everything's great. The last thing we can do, or there's more we can do, and we can go over some of that in class, but if I turn on the reference again, one other thing you can do, turn this to this has a little spike at the bottom of the pommel. So a couple ways you can handle this. You could I've shown you what chamfer does when you use, that's stupid. I'm gonna collapse this right now because I can always cut it in half again. I'm gonna collapse it only because that way that edge that's overlapping I can fix. Right now, see, this is because there's multiple edges there from the symmetry. If I just go collapse at this point, it'll collapse down to 1, and then I get rid of all those problems. Okay, it's just the overlapping edges and trying to find those smoothing groups. So I'm gonna grab that and I'm gonna look at it from the front, and you can see that the spike comes out kind of before the edges of this. So I can do chamfer on this too, not only edges, but I can do it on these. Now it's still turned on. Oh, no, it's not turned on, but it's too big. So I pull it back out, go back to the front, try and match the width of this. I'll just pull it in until, yeah, that looks about right. Let's say, okay. Now, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to delete this middle part and make it really simple. I'm going to grab with the kidney bean this edge right here, right? And then if I hold Control and click on Vert, like we talked about before, it grabs the vertices that are connected to those edges. So I have that. I go back to front, and if I hold Shift, oops, actually I was wrong. What I should have done is stay on edge mode. Shift and drag down like this to about where I want it to be pointed out to. And then I can say collapse. And look at that, spike. Super fast. Okay. So the other things you're going to want to do on this sword is, again, you can cut it in half now. It should be exactly half again. So if it's easier, and usually it is kind of to think this way, you can cut it in half and do symmetry. That way you can see inside of the object if you need to. And I might have, no, I'll grab this one. And just remember, you're probably going to have to do your smoothing groups again. And you don't have to at this point. You can keep it this way. All I'm going to do is start figuring out how to these. And just like the other ones, if I grab them and I say connect, this is the easiest way to do this. And I just drag it out and then squish them up so they're closer together. And then I can move them after I make them. You know, I want 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I need 1, 2 more, so 10 of them. And then I can move it down a little bit, just kind of lining it up. Oops, that's the wrong one. 10. I want this a little bit tighter. Yeah, I got to get it close. It's probably never going to be perfect because I drew that and it probably wasn't perfect. But now I can see like going to 4, grabbing all of these edges, all of these edges, all of these edges, all of these edges, all of these edges. If I want, I can grab these too. Just make sure if you do it this way, you do it on the back as well. Or you can cut it in half after you build one path. Anyway, let me see. Go to the back view, Z, N, these two. Okay. Unhide my my references again. Okay. So if I look at it from the front, it's kind of the same, and I extrude or bevel even, and then you'll see that it's freaking out because it's group again. We want it to be local normal, and then obviously we don't want it to go out that much, so I'd say 0.1 maybe, and then turn this way off altogether at first just to get the right height. Maybe 0.2. Yeah, it's not too bad. And then I'll pull this in a little bit so I can get that kind of bevel thing. So I've got it. Okay. The other way to do it would have been to cut this in half, and then that way you don't have to do both sides at the same time. But okay, so one of the things that you may notice is that these are square and my images were round, and they don't match exactly. I'm not as much worried about that. But if you go to 2, again, edge mode, and grab all of these, oops. Grab one of these, one of these, one of these, oops, and one of these. Control or Alt R, and then just say connect, but you're going to get a bunch, so we're going to turn this down to 0, just to 1. I'm going to turn this to 0, so it's not moving the position of it. What I can do is I can, and I've just divided all of these exactly in half. What I can do is go to these guys, and these guys, these guys, and these guys, these guys, and these guys, and those guys. And I can scale them inward like this. And then when I take those edges again, if I chamfer them and I do it really small, like we did with the curve on the sword, we can get our, oops, wrong one. We can get our curve just so. So now we've got these curved edges on all of our beveled parts. Oh, it looks like I should have gone all the way down. I did that last time too. So if you wanted to go all the way down, I mean, if you want to make this right. So undo, I'll do it again. Maybe I won't. Okay, so let me go redo. Okay, so those are, let me see. You suck. Chamfer, those are fine. So if I screw up, like if you screwed up like this, like I did, I didn't do the extrusion or the visual extrusion on that, and you can say that is or not. All I have to do is go to here and here. I'll show you how to fix it. Go to here and here, and the back to, and extrude. Obviously not 10. Oh, you know what? Let's actually say bevel. Hopefully it's kept our bevel, yeah. So it kept our bevel exactly the same height. So that's good. So we say, okay. We leave it exactly the same. And then we can get rid of this edge and this edge, this edge and this edge, this edge and this edge, this edge and this edge. We can delete them. And we can grab, we can target weld this vert to there. I don't really like that one. This vert to there. This vert to there. I guess we'll do it this way and pull it in. This vert to there. It's easier if you don't screw up, but sometimes you're gonna, so it's good to know how to fix it. just to there. And then I'm just going to take these edges. Now, one of the things I want to teach you guys is this edit geometry. I have this constraints. I'm going to turn it to edge. And then that way I can't move in any direction that's not connected to that edge. So I can just pull it in. I know that way it's perfect. All right. And grab this one and pull it in. There we go. If I go to the front, that looks pretty good. And I go to these two down here. I know it's lining exactly on the surface of the, let me show you what I mean, because see how it's bent? If I didn't do that constraint, it would have just gone straight instead of going across that edge like that. So I do that, and now I'm pretty good. I probably have to do the back that way too, but that's enough for now. I will talk to you guys today.